Okay, and welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, and I wanted to just take a second and thank all my listeners. We're actually on episode 87, believe it or not. We've been close to 2 years, been consistent almost every week with a new show, and I just wanted to thank everyone. I really appreciate all your comments, your feedback, and I've asked, and you have supplied me with even topic ideas. So I appreciate that, and keep them coming in. Comments, messages, emails. I greatly appreciate it. So if there's a topic you're interested in, definitely send that my way. A question or would like an introduction, and including our guest today, definitely let me know. I check and respond to all those messages. So thanks again for joining. As I mentioned, in my previous show that we did, we talked about an insider's perspective into franchising. If you had any questions on that episode or have any questions on franchising, we do also offer a free coaching service where we are able to help define if a franchise is a good fit and figure out which are maybe 2 or 3 franchise companies that may be a great fit for you. So you can just comment. You can go to the website, ggthefranchiseguide.com, and looking forward to chatting, seeing if we can be of help. So for today, I wanted to welcome my guest. We've been talking for probably the last year or so, Stacey Brown Randall, and wanted to welcome her to the show. Give a little quick bio here. She is the multiple award-winning author of Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, which is going to be the topic for today. Host of the Roadmap to Grow Your Business podcast and a national speaker. She has had the privilege of helping well-known corporations and franchises. But our focus is on small business owners and solopreneurs. Stacey's been featured in national publications like Entrepreneur Magazine, Investor Business Daily, Forbes, CEO World, Fox News, and more. She received her master's in organizational communication and is married with 3 children. Stacey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you to come on the show, and we had some changes and formatting on the show, so I'm glad you were able to make it today. So if you could just give the audience, we have a lot of corporate executives that are either making that transition to business ownership full-time or possibly part-time as a semi-absentee owner, including existing franchisees. If you can give a little bit on your background, just to kind of give a little context as to how you got into your role today.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could just tell you that one day I woke up and God was like, all right, Stacey, we're going to make you brilliant when it comes to referrals. That is so not how it happened. I actually had to go through a business failure. I started an HR consulting firm. It made it almost 5 years. It didn't quite make it to the 5-year mark. So about 4 years in, that business failed. I found myself back in corporate America before I figured out how to escape again and start another business. And this one, of course, we've been in almost a decade now. So it's been going much better than the first, but it started out as a productivity and business coaching practice. And it did really well in its first year. And I started really paying attention to how am I going to make this business different from that first business that failed. And what I realized is that I needed a better way to grow the business, like the filling of the prospecting pipeline. And I kind of took what I learned from my business failure, applied it into my first business, and really decided I wanted to double down on referrals to grow my business. But then I realized I didn't want to do it any of the ways that people teach you of how to get referrals. So I just I literally felt like some days I was just throwing spaghetti on the wall. I'm like, will this stick? Will this stick? We'll see. But in my first year, I got 112 referrals that I didn't have to ask for, that just came more naturally. But then I realized, there's actually a process and a procedure that I'm following. Continued to get triple digit referrals every year since. And really over time, my productivity and business coaching practice has really morphed into helping people to learn how to generate the referrals and the way that I teach it. And I've been doing that now for a really long time. We're in 11 different countries. So we serve small business owners in 11 different countries all around the world, which is really awesome. And it's really nice to watch people who want their business to grow, but want it to grow in a way that really works for who they are, not necessarily for the way they teach sales training, to watch them have success and watch them grow their business. So, if you had told me when I was off to college that I would one day own a business that was teaching people how to generate referrals without asking, I would be like, what are you talking about? I'm going to college to be the next Katie Couric. Right. So I definitely went on a complete and total divergent path. But it's been really fun, and it's really rewarding to help people stay away from the membership badge and the Business Failure Club, because I don't need a second one, and I certainly don't want anybody else to join me there either.
Right. No, that's a great story. And to your point, yes, we learn a lot from our mistakes. But if we can help you avoid those mistakes, I always say, why go through it? So it's a great learning experience. But if you can teach from it, so that's awesome. So referrals is a very interesting topic. It sounds like common sense, right? Ask for referrals, or you should grow your business with referrals. And most people, when you ask them, the referrals are the best candidate or best person to work with because they've been referred by somebody else. And yet we don't ask, or we don't have necessarily a system. I know that when I needed a painter, I put out on Facebook, can anyone recommend a painter in my area? I didn't go on Google and start looking at listings. I mean, at least that's what I personally did. And I found your approach really interesting because not only are you talking about referrals, you're telling people getting referrals without asking, which is pretty amazing. And I'm sure everyone listening would like to learn more. So talk to us a little bit about, you wrote a book and kind of the basis, the foundation of what you teach all your clients.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think everyone would agree with you that they're like, if I can get all my clients to come in through referral, my life would just be way easier, right? It would just be a lot easier if all my clients showed up because somebody else sent them my way. And the truth is, what most people think, though, about referrals is they kind of fall into two camps of thinking. They think that I just have to do amazing work and I'd be so amazing, and the delivery and everything will be so awesome that people will just naturally want to refer me and will just refer me all day long. And the truth is, there is a very small percentage of your clients that will actually consistently refer you after they're done working with you, if you don't do anything else. And there's a small percentage of clients that will refer you while they're working with you. The number goes even lower once they're done working with you. And so while it's awesome to get referrals from clients, I mean, obviously it means you're doing something right. And we want that. At the same time, that's not a way to actually build volume or sustainability when it comes to receiving more potential new clients by referral. The other camp that people fall into is that, well, I've got to do something to generate referrals. And then it's a matter of, well, what do I do? And there are lots of different strategies and tactics and people who teach different things about generating referrals. And I call them the old school referral tactics. And they are typically like, hey, you got to ask, you got to compensate. You have to network to know a ton of people and always be seen so that you're being seen the minute somebody thinks about referring you. Or that you actually just have to hope that they will happen. Like, that's kind of like the strategies that I feel like people are told. And if none of those fit you, if you don't want to incentivize, if you don't want to ask, if you don't want to constantly be networking to knowing a ton of people because you don't have that kind of time, like you're trying to run a business, you're not really left with much. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, all right, so typically what I do when I'm trying to figure out something, or when I'm trying to figure out how to make something easier for myself, I just reverse engineer things. And so I started paying attention, to really, what does it look like to generate referrals? Like, what is a referral? Why do they actually happen? And then what is it that I can do to have a strategy in place, like an actual plan, not hope, so that I can make sure that I'm doing the things I need to do for referrals to actually happen. And it really was like, when I sat down and started breaking it apart, like, okay, why am I getting referrals? What's happening? What are all the dynamics behind it? What's the psychology behind it? What's the brain science behind it? What's the social science behind it? Like, all these pieces, it's like, oh, it's like almost figuring like, I just uncovered something really incredible that is actually pretty simple. But it allows you to generate referrals, what I would call naturally, like in a way that feels good and protects the relationship that you have with the person who's going to refer you. So there are, again, if you fall into the second bucket of like, I don't want to leave it to chance, and maybe my clients will refer me, maybe I can, I'll just hope that they refer me. If you don't want to fall into that bucket and you want to do a strategy, then you have to decide which strategy. And if the asking and incentivizing and networking doesn't fit you or your brand or how you want to spend your time, you really were left with nothing else. Like, that was it. And so when I started uncovering all of my stuff around referrals, I was like, wait, no, you don't have to do it that way. It can look different. And that's really what we have been doing with our clients, is really helping them understand, first of all, just the foundational pieces of referrals, and then actually the strategies that produce the ultimate results.
I like that, and I like how you mentioned reverse engineer the process. That's exactly what we do with our candidates. Not just where do you want to be, and then we'll figure out how to get there. Don't worry about the how. So let's look at the end result, and I really like that approach. It's funny. Years ago, I worked in the investment world, and I won't name the bank, but one of the larger banks, and they did a study, and a lot of the financial advisors in training and the more established guys, they did a study as to why people don't refer. I found this pretty interesting, and I didn't get a chance to share this with you, but I just remember this study this is going back 25 years ago. And they said the number one reason, and this was specifically for the financial, in the investment world, financial services, was they were not getting referrals, right? And the advisors were like, why? And it's because they were afraid that financial advisor would share their client's information with the referral. And I found that to be pretty interesting. I never would have thought that, because obviously there's this confidentiality. So they were afraid that their financial assets would be disclosed to this other person. So I just that always stuck in my mind as to, I always assumed, and I've obviously learned and evolved and been following you for a while, but I always said, well, there's maybe I did something wrong, or there's more, I guess what do we equate it to? More risk or more pain in referring. What was the reward on the referral? Can you talk a little bit about that? I know we didn't talk about this before the show, but they felt like, okay, if I refer them, I don't really benefit, but I feel like there's more risk on my end, so I'm not even going to bother referring. So can you talk a little bit about maybe why people would not refer, if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, I think what speaks to that study is you really have to actually think about how the question was asked and to whom it was being asked, and then based on how that person ever referred their financial advisor before or not. I think the other thing is that if that's the concern that's a client or somebody else has about referring a financial advisor, then you don't have a very good relationship with them.
I agree. That was right.
At the heart of I'm afraid they're going to talk about my money with someone I refer to them, is truly, like, I get it. It's a fear.
Right.
It's just a ridiculous one.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, any financial advisor that knows what they're doing would never disclose, which
Agreed.
Then also means you've had those conversations and your client has that relationship with you to where that's not even a concern, right? It's not as if you need to have a conversation with them and like, if you refer me, I will never disclose your financial information. Like, those words should never have to come out of their mouth either.
Agreed.
Right? It should be more about, I don't ever talk about the work that you and I are doing together, right? With others. Like, it's like, if you run into me at a party, you can act like you know me, right? I just think it's really fascinating. And I think that comes down to the relationship that people have with the people they choose to do business with. Right. And that relationship is ultimately what drives somebody to refer. And the truth is I would assume that the people, so here's what I would love to do in that situation for that research, is to look at it and be like, okay, so who did they ask? Had these been people who had been asked to refer their financial advisor and had chosen not to, and then given the reason why? Right. Because I don't think that's the real answer. I think that's the answer they gave because in the survey they needed to give an answer. And that was probably the safest, easiest answer to give. Oh yeah, I didn't refer because I just think that I thought they were going to talk about my financial situation if I referred someone else. Because again, that relationship you have would handle that one quickly. I think the other thing is that they got asked if they would refer, and that didn't sit well with them, and they didn't want to, and people don't actually want to be asked to refer. Like, there are some people that if you ask them to refer you, they may not care, they may not take offense to it, but I have found that the majority of people actually do, because actually what you do when you ask someone to refer you is that you create work for them. Right. If they don't know someone to refer to you, now they got to be like, oh, okay, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable. I don't know anybody to refer you, but now I feel like I've got to come up with somebody to refer you. And so now I got to think about everybody that I know. I don't know who needs this, who needs what you do, who needs what I do.
Right.
And it creates work. And that's not ultimately how the best referrals happen to begin with, because we've all been there where somebody has asked you for a referral and you felt somewhat compelled to give them a name. And then sometimes you give them a name, but not a number, because you just are trying to avoid the situation, because ultimately the majority of people do not enjoy being asked to refer when they haven't offered, and it's coming completely out of the blue, and it's not something they would have thought about doing. That doesn't mean you can't get referrals from them. It just means if asking for a referral is going in the front door, like bull in a china shop, hey, who do you know that's just like you that I should be working with, right? If asking for a referral is like bull in the china shop, going in the front door, the strategy I'm going to teach is going to be going in the side door.
Gotcha.
And it's going to be about focusing and protecting that relationship, because when you protect that relationship, right, and you really make sure that that person knows and understands like that you care about them, and it is that you care about them regardless if they refer you, then you can really actually start to develop the right relationship with the right language and the right outreach to ultimately be able to bring in referrals. It's like making referrals their idea. Versus your idea, and asking for them or offering to incentivize them for a referral makes it all about you. And a referral, it's just never about you. Yes, you're the one who gets a new client. That's awesome. But that person didn't refer them to you because they were trying to help you grow your business. I mean, I know everybody wants to believe that people wake up thinking about us, but let's be honest. Who did you wake up this morning thinking about outside of your like family, right? Whose business did you wake up thinking about this morning?
Yeah,
your own, right?
My own, right? And then no one else's. My own and coffee. Those are the two things. So,
of course, we wake up and we think about our spouses, our partners, and then our children, and then
of course
coffee. Right? For me, it's like, when am I getting my Starbucks? And then our businesses. We wake up thinking about ourselves. We're not innately super selfish humans. It's just how we think. So no one else is waking up and being like, yeah, I'm going to see how I can help Stacey's business grow today. I'm going to see how many referrals I can send her. They're not. They're waking up thinking about themselves. So you have to make referrals more about them, coming from a place where they know that you care about them. And this is something I always teach my clients. It's the idea that if you can make sure that a referral source or a potential referral source knows that you care about them, and you can endear them to you, and they can know that you don't take their referrals for granted. And so you can impact how they feel about you. You can then direct how they think about you. So first we want to impact how they feel, and then we can direct how they think. And all of that comes down to, with the language you use and the what you do, it's got to be genuine. It's got to be authentic. You actually do have to care about the people who refer business to you. And when you're like, of course I want to take care of the people who send me clients, then you can start directing how they think. But everything is done from a place of really respecting and honoring the relationship with the person who's going to refer you.
I like that. I like that a lot. And it's true, right? It's what you nailed it. And I think, coming from myself, I've owned a couple businesses as well. And you almost assume the person's motivations. Well, if I just offer, how are they not going to refer me business? I'm going to offer them X amount for someone to come over. So wanted your thought on this. I've actually done things a little bit differently, and I don't have a system in place. I'll be the first to admit. I know with referrals, we offer such a unique service where not everyone's looking to own a business, let alone a franchise. So I'll go in and just say, hey, you know what? We've loved working together. Who do you know? And this is what I've tried, and it's getting there. Maybe I have to work on the wording, but who do you know that would benefit from my? And I always get confused over here, for my book, and that's far back there. Who can I send a book on your behalf that may benefit from the information here? And I don't ask for phone numbers, name, address, and I mail it out, and I actually sign it and say, this is on behalf of John Smith, who thought you would benefit from the book. So that's an approach I've tried, and it's worked well. It's typically 1 or 2 books that I send out per person we ask. So it's I always take advantage of the holiday season, because it's like, maybe you can get out of buying a present, I could send the book out on your behalf. So as I jokingly would say.
Okay, so here's what I always say to folks when they ask questions like that, when there's a strategy or a tactic that they've been trying and they're kind of thinking about it from that perspective, is how well it's working matters more
right.
than anything else that I would tell you. So your response was that it's working well. Usually for every person that I ask, I'm sending out a book, right? Or so for each person that I ask. So here's my kind of thought process here. Number one is are any of the people receiving the book ever eventually ending up in your pipeline? Right. So if anybody who is actually on the receiving end of that book, are they ending up in the pipeline? And actually, is that 10% end up in the pipeline or 25% end up in the pipeline or more? Right. So number one, we start at the outcome is, are you getting what you want? Yes, you're getting your book in more people's hands. And as the author of a book and someone who's working on their second book, I can appreciate how much work that is and how you're like, can some people please read the book? Because it's so much work to write a book and get it published.
That is.
And so part of this is, okay, great, right? But how many of those people who are receiving the book are actually ending up in your pipeline or actually ending up and having a conversation with you, right? So that would be number one. The second thing I would ask is, after they give you that name and you send the book out, do they ever ask you to send out another book to somebody different? And if that is like a few percentage points less than 10%, right, then I would start to pay attention to. So it's not the fact that you ask and they're like, oh, yeah, here's a name, right? Because it could be that they actually in that moment thought of someone and they're like, yeah, here you go. Or it could be that they just gave you a name in that moment because you asked and they didn't want to seem unhelpful, but they actually didn't have anyone to give to you. I don't know, right? I'm not in their heads. And without being able to ask them, I'm not going to make that assumption, but it's going to be one of those two things. So then it comes down to, well, what are the results of those people that are getting the book? And then are those people ever asking you to send out a book on their behalf to anyone else or to send your book to anyone they thought of? Or are they actually continuing to refer you after that? So what I always tell folks is that you can ask anyone for a referral. When you go and say, is there anyone I can send the book to, right, on your behalf? At the end of the day, right, it's a singular ask for a singular response.
Right.
That's not going to build volume or sustainability, though. Right. At the end of the day, your asking was the trigger for them to give you a name. Now, if that triggers lots of the people that you're asking to continue to give you names, and it creates this like watershed moment for you where they're always saying, hey, can you send the book to so-and-so and so-and-so? And 3 months later and 6 months later, they're saying, hey, can you still send the book to? And it's lots of people. Well, then we have a strategy. But if it's onesie, right? Like I send the book and then sometimes they never actually become a client or they never actually get into the pipeline and they never ask me to send another one. Then it's just it's a triggered tactic that's happening in the moment. And so what I always say, it's just like asking. It's just like going up to someone and asking them for a referral. Them thinking about giving you a name is only happening because you're asking them, right? So them thinking about sending out a book is only happening because you're asking them and you're offering to do it, which means if we want to keep sending out books, we have to consistently be asking. The problem is that triggering relies on you doing a lot of the work, you asking people. And then the question is, do you always have to find new people to ask? Or can you go back to the same people and say, hey, anybody else you want me to send a book to? Well, by the time you do that the third or fourth time, and their answer is no, or they're kind of sort of maybe giving you names or maybe not, then we realize that we're actually damaging the relationship in the process. So it all comes down to, there are lots of tactics, but for something to become a strategy, we really want it to actually produce ongoing results, right? So it's like me working with a business owner and taking them from averaging about 15 or 20 referrals in a year and getting them to 50 in a year. Right. And that's a strategy. That is we're not just going to do this one thing, but we're going to build an entire strategy around it. And there are 3 foundational strategies that I tell all of my clients. You got to have these 3. There's a lot of other strategies that we layer on top of those situational strategies, next level strategies. But the 3 foundational ones are actually strategies they're plans that you operate from, that you build and operate from year after year after year. That builds sustainability. So when I start to be concerned about people who are like, well, like in your case, I'm offering my book. I'm like, great, but that means you're always having to offer your book. It's not working for you in the back end. It's always taking work by you. So again, if it's working, I'm not going to break it for you. Then great, do it. But I would definitely say, let's unpack what's actually working and what the results are actually saying.
Awesome. No, very, very well said. And that does require keeping track of everything. You know, I have a new CRM, and that's the beauty. You can track exactly books sent out, responses. So that's extremely helpful. You had mentioned a second book. Talk to us about is that something that's going to be published soon? Because I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is like the $1 million question.
Yeah.
Stacey, is the second book ever going to get published? Now we're in 2022. I can't really use COVID as my excuse anymore because it's our normal, right?
Right.
But in 2020 and 2021, I could kind of get away with it. It's a 3-part book. The 2 of the 3 parts are done. I am hoping to finish up the final couple of chapters sometime first or second quarter, and hopefully it'll be published end of 2022 or beginning of 2023. It runs on a publisher cycle, so those are never fast.
Right.
So I'm at the mercy of my publisher. But yes, so if my book that's out currently is called Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. That book actually speaks to one of the 3 foundational strategies. The second book that I'm working on speaks to another one of the 3 foundational strategies, and that's the referable client experience. So the 3 foundational strategies that I tell every business you've got to have in place is, number 1, you've got to have a strategy for your existing referral sources. If you've been in business at least a year or 2, more than likely you have some referral sources. And the longer you've been in business, maybe the more, but not always, but maybe the more referral sources you have. What are you doing to cultivate more referrals from the people who have already shown a propensity to refer you? And they've already referred you in the past. So that strategy, that's the one that I give the overview on in the first book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. That's the strategy for more referrals from our existing or current referral sources. The second strategy that does not have a book, the second strategy is, what if you have those clients and contacts you want to refer to you? And so you've got those clients and contacts you want to refer to you, but they're not yet referring to you. How do you cultivate them into a referral source? How do you turn somebody who's never referred you into a new referral source? That's our potential referral source strategy. So strategy number 1 is existing referral sources. Strategy number 2 is potential referral sources. Strategy number 3 is it's a 2-pronged approach. Number 1, it's, do you actually have a referable client experience? Are you doing things within your client experience that actually make you referable? And we teach this based on the stage that your client is in and a 2-part formula that actually makes someone want to refer you, because just doing amazing work is actually not going to be enough for someone to refer you, at least not consistently, and not enough of your clients referring you. So there are things that we teach that actually make you more referable. And then the second part of the referable client experience is there are also moments within your client experience where you can actually plant referral seeds and use specific language to help your folks start thinking about referring you without ever knowing that that's ultimately what you're doing. And so the language piece is the piece that's the thread that kind of runs throughout all 3 of these, but it's still always coming down to the first 2 are strategic, like they're strategies for people we can identify. Our referable client experiences, all the clients are going to get it, and we're going to see who it actually prompts to refer and who it doesn't, so that they can become an existing referral source. But those are the 3 foundational strategies that we look at. There are a ton of strategies that you can layer on top. Like, what if you are getting referrals, but they're not the ideal client? Well, do you know how to have a conversation with a referral source so they'll actually give you better ideal clients, right? And so there's lots of other ones that we kind of look at, like, how do you have a conversation with a prospect when they're in the buyer's journey that actually can create them into a referral source? Like, there's all these additional situational referral strategies that we layer on top of, but they only happen when you've got your foundational 3 in place.
I like that. Wow. And I like that how you mentioned, because sometimes we do get referrals and they're not our ideal candidate, such as with franchising, you need some type of investment amount to invest in the business. So we've received referrals and no money whatsoever, which is fine. We all have to start somewhere, but so there is some education. But yeah, I do like that. So the question is, you have a book, second book is coming out. Who is a good fit to work with you? Because I know you have a couple options of working with you. I think there was an online and then a direct option where you're holding people accountable. Talk to us a little bit about the programs, and also maybe who is not a good fit for the program.
Yeah, so I'll start with who is and who isn't a good fit. So I don't work in the hospitality or retail space or the medical space or the online course creator space. So my strategies are more for, it doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C, but it is more of our professional services folks. So I will work with consultants. I'll work with business coaches, life coaches. I'll also work with attorneys, financial advisors. It's kind of funny when I think about all the different companies I have worked with, real estate agents, home stagers, mortgage brokers, doggy daycare. It was actually a franchise that I worked with. Yep, the individual owner. We had great success with that. So, but usually it's people who have a relationship with the people who are going to refer them, and their businesses are not highly transactional. Okay. So if they're not highly transactional, that means there's time for a relationship to develop, whether that is a huge investment when they decide to work with you or an ongoing relationship because they continue to work with you, like a financial advisor or a CPA. Right. And so, from that perspective, that's who it is and who it's not for. There are two main ways really to work with me. And one is almost all, not every single one, but almost everything that we teach is available in an online program. They're not all available to the public. Some are reserved for some of our other clients, but those 3 foundational strategies, right? Like that is like anyone can come in and take that as an online program, no matter where they are. But if you want to work with me and you want to actually be held accountable and you want to know that there is a community of folks, there's a group sessions and there's one-on-one time, and then there is access to everything, that's called building a referable business. And that is, we refer to it internally as the whole enchilada because you get everything, right? And so you start with me, there's an onboarding process we go through. We figure out how you're going to spend your first 90 days. There are 4 of those over the course of a year. And then, so you have some one-on-one time with me as we build each of your 4 90-day sprints. Then there's weekly sessions where you're held accountable. You're never more than 7 days away from getting your questions answered. And that alone helps people make faster progress. And so from that perspective, building a referable business is really where we focus a lot of our time and attention and our resources, because those folks they're investing, right, to actually have access to everything, but to go at a pace that works for them in the course of a year with access to me and a community. But again, we also have the do-it-yourself type version for many of our strategies, which are taught through online programs as well.
And do you have people that sometimes start with the online and then kind of shift over and want the personal, the accountability, which in this case is going to be huge?
Yeah, we always tell folks, if you make the decision to do the online program, then we want you to be confident in that decision, which means you're confident in your ability to make yourself go through it and do the work. You do upload your work and you do communicate with me through our online portal as you go through it. If you choose one of the online programs, we want that to work for you. But yes, you can always make the switch into building a referable business. There's a timeline for when you can and can't do that, because we let people use their investment from the online program into BRB just to keep it fair, that you can actually use your investment to come into BRB. But we also want, when people come into building a referable business, our BRB whole enchilada, that's a commitment. And we want people who are like, hey, I don't have time to waste second guessing myself. And I need the accountability because I need to get this done. I need these strategies built and I need to move on with my life, or have my team help me build these strategies and move on with my life. And just know that in 5 years, when I talk to them, they're like, yep, still running our same strategies we learned from you 5 years ago.
And what would you say is a time commitment? Is there, just to give the listeners an idea, obviously it may vary, but.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the online program, you can get through any of the online programs within a couple of hours. Implementing and actually doing the exercises and then implementing it will probably take you a little bit more time, depending on the type of business that you have. And if you have processes or not, that's going to dictate whether you're going to spend a little bit more time building. Within building a referable business, it's the same amount of time to execute on it, but you do have access to a weekly session, a group session where we kind of answer questions and hold each other accountable. And then it really just depends on which strategy you're deploying in that 30-day cycle as to how much time you're going to need. Some you can get through in an hour or so, and then implementation is pretty easy. And some you need to implement, and then you need to actually build and then implement for a month or two before you move on. But I always tell folks, nobody should be spending 5 or 10 hours a week on the referral piece. If you are, you're doing it wrong. This should be there's building time. And then now we're in execution mode. And a lot of times execution mode isn't even monthly the way that we teach it. So it's not a huge time commitment once you've got the strategies learned and implemented. Gotcha.
Awesome. So if someone's not certain, they want to get additional information, where is the best place to start?
Yeah, I would say the best place to start is on our website. It's StaceyBrownRandall.com. Stacey is spelled with an E. there is information there about how you can learn about our programs. But what I always tell folks is get the book or maybe take our Referral Ninja quiz to figure out what level of a Referral Ninja you are at. All that can be found on the website. That'll help you understand where are you in your ability to generate referrals, and do you resonate with our philosophy and the philosophy that I teach? And if that's the case, then of course, more information is there on the website for you to learn more about working with us, whether that's through building a referable business because you want to work with me, or because you decide that you want to go through one of our online programs.
I like it. And I took the quiz myself, and I definitely need some work. So I encourage everyone to definitely take the quiz. I'm not sure if I'm actually even a ninja, maybe a ninja in training, but I forget what the end result, but I admittedly.
Do you remember the colored belt your ninja was wearing? Was it green?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I just remember.
So the belt colors connect. Sometimes people would remember the belt colors more than they remember the level.
I remember it because for getting access to the group, I had to put that in there. So I just remember it being really poor, and I admit that. I admit my faults, and I definitely have to work on that.
Don't worry, we're here for you whenever you're ready.
I appreciate it. So this has been awesome. I found this to be extremely helpful. This is a topic that comes up, and the show is not all about franchising. We have some awesome guests. Stacy brings a ton to the table when it comes to coaching and referrals. And referrals, it's a dream come true. Getting referrals without asking, it's like this is too good to be true. And I've gotten some awesome feedback from colleagues of mine that work directly with Stacy. So high recommendations. I always like to end the show. Tell us an interesting fact coming from the South, if you remember what you put in the form.
I don't know if I remember, but I'm going to say my interesting fact being from the South, I'm actually more likely to say you guys than y'all.
Y'all.
Because I think some of my formative years when I was 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 years old were spent living in Boulder, Colorado. Okay. And so I picked up the you guys, the Midwestern you guys. Mm-hmm. And so by the time I got back to the South, I was born in the South. And then when I got back to the South for my middle school years and on, I'm more likely to say you guys. Now the y'all will come out when I'm either usually like really irritated at my children or I've been drinking. Most of the time, though, you're just going to hear the you guys.
It slips. It comes out. How about you guys? But we spell it Guyz here in New Jersey. So we have and then if you go one state north to New York, north to New York, you have use guys. Right. So you have all different variations of that. So that's pretty funny. When I saw that, I just started recently asking that, and I've gotten some really interesting, topics to come up from that. That ends up almost being another show. So, but to be respectful of your time, I know we said we keep it at about 30 or 35 minutes or so, and we're right on the dot. So, Stacy, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We are going to put everything, show notes, so social media. We're going to put the website on there, link to the book. And if there's anything else that we didn't discuss or something you think of afterwards, we can always add that. So again, Stacy, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.